Hello, welcome back for Unit 2 of our American History 1 course here at Waldorf University. And as we get into the second week, this video is going to focus on our skill for the week, which is evaluating evidence. We're going to talk about the Unit 2 discussion board, and we're going to talk about your Unit 2 assessment, and maybe some strategies to being successful there. So let's think about where we've been at, where we're going. So we're off to a pretty good start. I think the assignment last week, for the most part, we did a good job of using that Waldorf Online Library, and that really ties into our skill this week of evaluating evidence. Our definition for evaluating evidence is determining what sources are most accurate and applicable. And when we consider this skill, I want you to think about how the information you're bringing into your assignment on a week-to-week basis, or into your discussion board post, or whatever that may be, or even in your day-to-day life, the idea that you can build your own credibility by appealing to the expertise of outside sources and really using good information literacy skills. So when we think about types of sources, we usually talk about them in three different types. First, in history, we usually often deal with primary sources, or sources that were created during the time period. And these primary sources are important because they help us better understand perspectives, better understand what individuals thought about a given situation, all those kind of things. We also have to be careful with primary sources because people are obviously kind of a product of their own environment, a product of their own times, and we have to be cognizant of the things that maybe influences some of their positions, some of the ways they think about things, all of that type of stuff. But primary sources are kind of the raw materials historians use a lot of times to study the past and how you can bring in different types of primary sources. These don't just have to be like journals people created or governmental records. They can be all sorts of different types of things that were created during the time period. It's an important thing to keep in mind with primary sources. Scholarly secondary sources are the category we see kind of used most often in these types of classes, like the one you're taking. And this is what you were looking for on your assignment last week. We want to make sure that we're looking at who's writing a source and why it's being published. Those are two things that can go a long way to helping us understand the credibility of both the author and the source, and what kind of support it can provide you as somebody working on an assignment. So if we think about the peer review process, this is incredibly nerve-wracking. I know whenever I send an article out for peer review, no matter how good I feel about it, there's always kind of that doubt in the back of your mind that says, maybe somebody's going to totally destroy this. So like, for instance, I just got a peer review back a couple weeks ago for an article I have coming out next month, and it went pretty well. There's 3 reviewers. They were really positive about my work. They offered some kind of suggestions for how I might improve some small things, ask some detailed questions that I was then able to go back in and improve the work and address some of those concerns before it ever went to publication. That's an important part of the process because you're taking all of these different people with expertise, bringing them together to create kind of a safeguard and a standard that has to be met for this type of research. So as you go into the Waldorf Online Library, use some of those sources I've put together under research resources over on the sidebar. For the most part, those are going to be primary and secondary high quality sources that can really, I think, help you better understand the content we're covering, but then also kind of help with your own credibility as you work your way through your assignments. The third type of sources we see a lot, and these are common, these are what we call tertiary sources. These are sources that are created kind of all the other things. If you hopped over to Google and you type in this week as you're working on your discussion board, you want to think about freedom of religion in the colonies, you type this in, it's going to pop up all sorts of different results with varying kind of quality to them. And even these types of sources we can use and learn valuable things from, but we want to make sure that as we use these kind of sources, we want to think about who's writing it and why you should be listening to them. This is a great skill, I think, beyond research. When you, if you're a person that gets on the social media sites and you get just really mad about things people are posting, consider the source always and think about why you should be listening to a person. And then also what kind of their motivation is. We know that if somebody's trying to sell us something, that's going to change their motivations and kind of what things they might talk about. Where with these peer-reviewed sources or academic research, for the most part, people are doing this in order to better understand subjects and kind of work their way through things in a way that I think is kind of certainly there's no, people don't really have a skin in the game necessarily. As you kind of work through this, you'll get a better feel for it, but just be thinking about this and thinking about people's credibility. Think about why you should be listening to the sources that you're consulting, and how you should be incorporating them into your work. So that's what we want to be thinking about with evaluating evidence. You can take this and use this on your discussion board for the week. There is a second video over there that talks specifically about some of these types of sources, about particularly secondary scholarly sources, books people have written about this topic, or what kind of information we could pull from there to see. So check that out, and maybe it'll help you understand what historians call historiography, or the different conversations about different topics that take place over time. People are constantly discovering new things or writing new kind of histories of different subjects, and sometimes people will talk about this as people trying to change history, but I think one of the things that we're constantly trying to do as historians is recalibrate kind of what types of sources we can bring in. Maybe there's new information that's come to light, maybe we think about things differently as a society, and we want to include different voices that maybe haven't been there in the past. Many of you are probably familiar with the phrase, history is told by the victors, and one of the things that modern historians are trying to do is kind of represent all the different sides of the story. And I really want you to consider that as more people get a voice at the table, and more people are kind of represented in our historical accounts, it just gains greater nuance and complexity that helps us better understand the situations people were working through in the past. So really commit to evaluating evidence in a meaningful way. And over on the discussion board, as you kind of look at this question of religious freedom or economic opportunity driving people to come to the colonies, the answer is both. There are certainly arguments to be made for both. People have different reasons. Individuals always kind of do things for their own motivations, and in the same way, some of you are kind of think about your own reasons for going back to college, or going to college for the first time. All of my different students, whether they be here on the residential campus of Waldorf or in the online format, are doing or pursuing education for a variety of different reasons, and same is true for people of the past. So be granting them that complexity also. So let's have a good conversation over there. I want to, as we turn the corner and start talking about this content, be thinking about the evidence you're bringing in, and also think about just the depth you're driving in those conversations. Don't fall into the bad habit of just kind of, especially in your responses, just saying like, good job, I think you said something cool there, keep up the good work. Those kind of things, you're not really adding anything to the conversation. So make sure that you're asking questions, make sure that you're representing your viewpoint and perspective. One of the things I believe in the online format is we have people all over the place doing all sorts of different things, so we should be able to have some pretty good discussions on a discussion board. Your assessment this week is matching and multiple choice, so it should be pretty straightforward. I don't have a ton of advice for you there, other than take a look at the questions. One of the things that I would do when I was pursuing my own kind of a degree online, as I worked on that second master's degree, is when I had one of these types of assessments, I would print it out before I ever did the reading, and then I would try to just fill them in as I was working through the content. That can make it a lot easier than if you, say, were to read your way all the way through the content, then come back to it, try to find those answers. It's much easier if you kind of on the front end go in knowing what you're looking for. So maybe that's a good strategy to try this week. As always, if you have questions, make sure you're reaching out, communicate. I'm here to put you in every position possible to be successful. I think we're off to a good start. I appreciate the hard work you've put into the course so far, and I look forward to the great things you're going to do this week. Good luck.